here is the one statistic that the rich in this country are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and that statistic is not being addressed by any economist at Westminster. And if I give you a glowing example of just how the actuaries down there give with one hand and take away with the other, I, with many others, work with pensioners. We got an increase, or we're getting an increase in April, and that figure was fiddled, and it's about 5% plus. Immediately, that gift to the pensioners is taken away because inflation in the shops and our fuel and our energy bills is exceeding 5%. So the statistical analysis of the poor is not being addressed, and that's the crime with all these economists and particularly Westminster politicians.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of this, clearly you've got a bigger view on it too, George, and I appreciate that. But, we started off talking about this one particular tax policy, which has been very much in the news. I mean, our guests this morning are suggesting that perhaps it's been given undue prominence. But how do you feel about it? Just the gesture, if you like, of saying, OK, your tax was 50p if you're earning over 150 grand a year. Now it comes to 45. I mean, Colin Brown is telling us, well, these people live to their incomes.
This is a sop. This is a sop to the better off. Your earlier caller is right. Take a clean sheet of paper and scrap the most complex tax system in the world, and that's the British tax system. Start with a clean piece of paper and employ Jonathan at whatever price he costs you to designate what in that paper will be a sensible economic policy for this country.
Jonathan, I hope you don't cost more than £150,000 a year, do you?
You could ask that question, but I couldn't possibly comment.
If you did, would you be happy to pay 50p tax? On earnings above that amount?
Yes, because probably I would be a banker, and whenever I hear about this phrase about banker bashing, nothing could be further from the truth. I repeat, as George has indicated, we are in money printing. We are bailing out the bankers to the tune of £100 billion a year. That is equivalent, Kaye, to 200 full-sized NHS trust hospitals every single year. Believe me, they love it paying 50% tax, because if we didn't bail them out, they wouldn't be getting the massive bonuses that they're getting.
Brian, is that true?
Oh dear. In fact, I might just say actually that it's not a 50% rate, it's actually a 60% rate, because you lose personal allowance of over £115,000. So it is quite a confiscatory charge. You can toss debates backwards and forwards about people getting bailed out. I mean, the fact is that the banking community are not the banking community, they're our financial institution community. We have to have a vital community operating. Whether it's bailed out under any designation, it's not there to bail out bankers' bonuses, to keep us and the economy moving forward. And I always find these arguments about the money there is so many hospitals popping up elsewhere somewhat, I may say, specious. I mean, what we need in this country is a fair tax system. And I don't think it's fair at the top end. I don't think it's fair at the bottom end. I think there is benefit fraud, for example, which should be dealt with. It's ludicrous that people are better off not working than they are working. And I think these are the sort of things we're going to be dealt with. But the trouble is, again and again, all budgets are politically motivated, and it makes a stand-back, rational a debate on pure objective economic considerations very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, the 50p tax rate and any proposed reduction, I mean, has been described in this programme as a red herring, as a sop, as tinkering about at the edges. But presumably it does bring some money in, and I don't know if you, Brian, or Jonathan know how much money it brings in, and that money will have to be found from elsewhere.
No one knows, because Mr. Osborne is actually looking into that very issue at the moment. It's quite interesting. When Ronald Reagan was governor of California, he actually cut tax rates, and the revenue flow increased quite dramatically. People will pay taxes at a reasonable level. They will move heaven and earth to avoid at higher rates. And I think it's much more important that we concentrate on lower earning bands to look after those people.
Yeah. Colin, why do people not want to pay their taxes? I mean, it's almost like the more they earn, the less they are inclined to pay their taxes.
I think I would agree with that, actually, Kaye. Yes, I think the very high earners do tend to take advice from probably large accountancy firms and try to mitigate tax or change where they live to try and avoid tax. And I suppose it's wrong, but it's the preserve of the rich to try and pay for that advice and take that advice. And I think that's where the Chancellor needs to clamp down. I tend to agree with Brian. I think whether we pay 50p or 45p is not really going to make an awful lot of difference. And I do agree with your earlier caller. I think we need to start with a clean piece of paper, because at the moment it's all the stealth taxes that people don't understand they're paying, and the increases to these. We've seen national insurance go through the roof for employers and employees in the last 10 years. We've got VAT at 20%. We've got fuel duty at almost 85p a litre. Stamp duty on property purchase, we've got council tax on a local level, interest and dividends being taxed, and of course inheritance tax on money that's already been taxed. So the whole thing needs to be looked at in the round.
Well, don't say we're not ambitious on this programme, because we started off with should they scrap the 50p top rate of tax, and now we're scrapping the entire tax system. 0500 92 95 00. George Osborne, please call in and we will send you out a written script of what you should do this afternoon. Still got time to change it. I don't think he stands up till about 12:30. Chris says high earners are already paying more than their share. 28% of the income tax revenue is paid by 1% of earners. Graham in Edinburgh says the less tax the super rich pay, the more they'll be able to employ people. Success, albeit financial success, should be encouraged and not frowned upon. I suppose there's a basic thing here to discuss, isn't it, in terms of should we be a high tax economy? People who are earning lots of money, should they contribute more, or do we aim to be a low tax economy and actually we all benefit from that because the economic generation activity of these high earners will bring us all up? I'm going to ask John in Kilbarchan what he thinks about that in just a second, but Alistair says a millionaire banker will save £850 a week in tax with this reduction. In Scotland, the Tories are irrelevant, and for this reason we must cut our ties with right-wing England, and this will enable us to build a fair society in Scotland. Another anonymous one here. I know a number of wealthy business people who would rather pay an accountant £500,000 to save them £250,000 in tax, because that's the way their brains work, and they perceive that the government wastes tax income. It's all part of a game to them. I'd wager that if Joe Public could reduce their tax bill, they would grasp it with both hands. Because they can't, they simply continue to complain about the rich, the government, and anything else they think is a fair target. John's in Kilbarchan. Morning, John.
Morning.
Good morning. Yet again, we start the programme in one place and we end up 3 miles to the left or right.
Yes.
Well, what's your thoughts?
I thought it was quite interesting there, because a lot of people were saying you should go for an asset-based tax system, which actually I thought the Tories tried about 25 years ago, and Scotland was outraged against it. And they hid it as a poll tax.
The poll tax, yeah.
Yes, which was basically, if nothing else, is asset-based. I don't understand why everyone gets so upset. I mean, reducing it for 5 pence will buy the Tories a lot of votes in England, and that's what they're after, is the votes in this large group of people, which is a large group of people, because the figures that you actually think about is what's a small amount of money to earn. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who work at the very, very bottom end, who pay tax, and it's those people that really should be helped, the very low earners, the people who are close to the benefits. Personally, I would half benefits, and I would half the rate of tax that you pay just above that. And you know what? And I wouldn't matter if everyone be out screaming at me now, calling me right wing and all the rest of it, because I would half benefits. But that would motivate people to get out their beds and actually go and get those jobs. If the people immediately starting work weren't being taxed heavily, it would be fantastic. Because I personally know people who've come to this country and are working for £25 a day, way below minimum wage, in cash-in-hand jobs, and because they can't claim benefits. And these people have houses, they've got cars, and they're getting on because they technically are paying in an economy that doesn't exist for any tax, because they can't claim benefit. And the Scottish people will not do a job for less than minimum wage or down to minimum wage, right? Because they will lose so much. And it's a lot of money per month that anyone who's unemployed gets.
Jonathan, do you want to respond to that? We've had some radical ideas this morning. Half benefits. That'll get people out and working and generating
half
wealth.
Benefits and half the rate that you pay tax when you initially go on tax system. So basically reduce your 20p, I don't know what it is, 20p in a pound to 10p in a pound rate. For everyone in that low bracket, the whole lot across the board.
Jonathan?
The problem, Kay, is that if, as always I've experienced happens in the media, if you focus on an issue in isolation, then it either sounds fantastic or it sounds terrible. I would generally agree with that suggestion, but only if we also stopped printing money, which creates inflation because we devalue our currency. By creating inflation, we increase the cost of living to those very same people, so they're doubly hurt. The problem is we need to, as the chap said, we need to take a blank piece of paper. We need to look at these things overall and not just do one thing or the other. Yes, we need to cut public spending, but also we need to stop bailing out banks. Also, we need to move from taxing wealth creation to taxing property. Also, we need to raise interest rates because that will help savers, and savers, there are more of them than borrowers, so that will help the economy too. There's lots of things we should be doing, but we won't be doing any of them because none of them is politically expedient.
Well, and that's the point. We're going to break for the travel, but that's the point that maybe we come back on, because yes, I mean, I have learned through the course of this discussion that there are lots of ideas for absolutely redrawing the map, and our discussion about 50p, 45p or 40p is perhaps a political discussion. So what is the political impact of either keeping it where it is or dropping it? 0500 92 95 00, and do keep your texts coming in on the most unusual health and safety advice you've ever had, because Rick says I have a pair of underpants with a label that says keep away from fire. Fortunately, I don't know anyone called Fire. I know someone called Rachel.
Thanks, Kaye. Well, yes, starting with the M8. At Renfrewshire, there are 20-minute delays in both directions approaching the roadworks at Glasgow Airport. Westbound, the queue starts at 26 Hillington. Eastbound, the delays are from junction 30 at Erskine to 29 St James in Paisley. There are also 25-minute delays on the A737 from Johnston up to the M8 at Paisley. There's also queuing on the M80 as it meets the M8 slip road. And a reminder, there are off-peak roadworks on the Clyde Tunnel this week from 9:30 to 3:30. Heading into Aberdeen on the A90, there are city-bound delays from Charleston to the Bridge of Dee. Edinburgh, half-hour delays city-bound on the A90 Queensferry Road from the Forth Road Bridge through to the Barnton Junction. That's due to a breakdown there. And there's also high wind warnings on the Skye Bridge just now. And a train fault has caused the London Euston to Glasgow Central sleeper train due in at 7:20 to be running 3 hours behind schedule. That's BBC Radio Scotland Travel.
Thank you very much, Rachel. You're listening to Call Kaye on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Kaye Adams. Just a wee bit later on this morning, maybe it's 10 or 15 minutes or so, television actor Dennis Waterman has been speaking out about punching and slapping his ex-wife on 2 occasions, but he insists that she was not a beaten woman. Is there a difference, do you think, between a beaten woman and a woman who has been hit? He says the problem with strong, intelligent women is that they can argue well. He and his ex-wife going through a bad patch, and he simply ran out of words and he lashed out from frustration. Do you have any sympathy with that? Do you see the distinction that he does? 0500 92 95 00 is the number to call. You can text 80295. Got an anonymous text in from Falkirk who says, yes, I think there could be something in this distinction, re domestic abuse. Is a man who lashes out in anger and frustration any different than a woman who slaps the face of her partner? I agree that habitual cold or full-on beating is out of order, but not sure that this warrants label wife beater. I also think it is more common than we realise. So do keep your views coming in on that, and more of my safety things, because I do love my safety things here. There are reasons for the warning, says this anonymous person. Ask the American woman who put her newly shampooed poodle in the microwave to dry it. That led to new advice. Ian in the Crooked Dev, good morning. I was informed by Sky TV engineers are not allowed to climb into your loft. I've had that one too. JT on the Isle of Arran says, I like the road signs warning of falling rocks. What exactly are we supposed to do about that? Run very fast. And H says, bottled water, which has trickled down volcanic hills for millions of years, has a use-by date of 2 weeks hence. Crazy. We're not allowed to say crazy. Unusual and surprising. Let's get back to the subject of the text. Oh, and we've got a lady on. Good morning, Audrey.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's nice to speak to another woman. No disrespect, guys. No disrespect at all. What do you think of the 50p tax and any suggestions to bring it down to 45?
Well, I was listening. I was more incensed by the man that was on just before the break there. It said about cutting the benefits the unemployed benefits by half, or any benefit system by half.
Yeah.
I had worked, paid tax, was single with no dependents. They gave up work to look after elderly parents. My father passed away there just before Christmas. I was then started signing on at the job centre after bereavement leave. They give you 8 weeks bereavement leave. I went along, signed on, and I'm entitled to £67.50 a week to run a home on.
£67.50
a week.
Yeah.
And the letter is in to say that with the April rise, it will go to £71. Now, admittedly, I get help with the community charge side, but I'm still liable for water and sewerage. And if he thinks that's a king's ransom to live on, he's sorely mistaken. Now, I have gone into the job centre, I've gone on to the courses that they send you on, updating your CVs, etc., looking for work, put down to work shift patterns, nights, don't care what kind of job it is, cleaning, shelf filling, anything. There is nothing there. Now, that's being realistic, and I was at a course with mixed age groups of people, some of them with qualifications coming out their heads, some of them with more skilled qualifications, and all saying the same thing. And we're all expected to live on £67.50 a week.
I mean, given that, Audrey, and maybe I'm being a bit naughty saying this, but just to make the leap, given your circumstances, which you've explained very well, thank you. I mean, given that our guests this morning, a lot of them saying, "Oh, this is a red herring, this is tinkering about," but we started with a statistic at the beginning that somebody earning £1 million a year will benefit to the tune of £40,000 if this tax rate is dropped by 5p. Given your situation, how does that make you feel?
Well, I would love to have £40,000 to start with. I mean, it makes me incensed. I mean, if you were to put half of the people and say, right, there you go, you get on and you try and manage a home. Do you buy food? Do you put heating on? Do you pay your house insurance? You need bus fares to get to the job centre. The time you take all that out, you're roughly down to living on £2 a day. And that is the true fact. I'm not the only person in this boat by a long chalk, but I thought I was bad off as a carer when I was getting less than £100 all in. And now I'm down to roughly another half of that, and still expected to run a home. Now, it's just not feasible.
No, I mean, and listen, Audrey, I'm grateful to you for bringing us back down to very real examples. And I'm going to bring in Colin Brown again, because, Colin, we have spent quite a lot of time talking about the tax system and the vagaries of it and how we could redraw it and loopholes, etc. But I say Audrey does bring us back down to, to earth. And you do have, and whether it's a political impact or whatever, when you have people living in that situation, Audrey says she's not the only one by a long chalk, symbolically or otherwise, to see people at the very other end of the scale financially benefiting from a tax cut, does it sit well?
I think Audrey's circumstances are very, very difficult, Kay, and I'm sure there are thousands like her, and I think everyone sympathises. Obviously, these are the people who are trying to look after their families and now find themselves in a very difficult job market trying to get back into employment. So, every sympathy. But I mean, I think in terms of what we're talking about... But
you'd still give a tax break to people earning 150 grand and more?
Yeah, I think... I do want to just try and put this in context for you, okay, because what will happen here is there has to be a certain amount raised to run the country and to try and cut the deficit that we've got at the moment. And what will happen is that the people that are around that £150,000 band, when they are actually going to pay higher rate tax at 50%, they will probably find that some other advantages that are open to them, such as higher rate pension relief or possibly a reduction in the rate at which you begin to pay 40% tax.
But why don't we close down? Why don't we close down those opportunities and keep the 50 pence tax rate?
Well, because I think what you have to think about here as well is one of the points that Audrey has raised is that there's no jobs out there. And that is a major point. We need to sort out the job market if we're going to turn around the economy. But the majority of people that are creating jobs are small businesses. And small businesses have very little incentive to grow at the moment because banks aren't lending to them. There are no benefits there in terms of taking on more staff. And they still have all the national insurance implications as well as the salary implications.
I don't know how many small businesses will be paying their staff 150 grand plus a year, Colin.
No, but what we're saying here, though, Kaye, is that to stimulate the economy and to help people like Audrey who are looking for jobs, we do actually need to stimulate the opportunities in the employment market. And the only way to do that is for people that own businesses to take on more employees. So there has to be some sort of look at this as well.
And where does that fit in with the top tax rate?
Well, what I would say is that the people that are paying the top tax rate will sometimes be employees in the case of maybe the banks and so on and so forth, but quite often they will be business owners. And if the country doesn't have business owners who are willing to put their head above the parapet and try and create employment for others as well as to benefit themselves, i.e. the entrepreneurial spirit, then we aren't going to get ourselves out of the mess that we're in at the moment.
Okay,
so there has to be a balance to this.
Audrey, can I just ask you how that sounds to you?
Well, what's are easy and what's are very, very cheap? Yes, he's quite right that everybody has to put in to get something out. And if I was to add up what I had actually put in and saved the government and the National Health Service over the years that I was a carer, then I would have been entitled to a lot more out of the pot than £67.50 a week. I feel that for my contribution that I had given, i.e. in saving them a lot of money, I should have then had been rewarded somewhat with a bit more coming out of the pot rather than just be somebody who is, as some people put it, not prepared to work.
Yeah.
I feel that my contribution should be entitled me to some sort of a premium.
Yeah. I mean, Audrey, I'll just make clear, actually, it wasn't Colin who said that about, cutting benefits by half.
It
was the other guy.
Right.
Listen, Audrey, we may well be back on the subject tomorrow because what we don't know about the budget is plans for the welfare benefit system. And, we are expecting some announcements to be made on that. So it may well be that we're going to come back and speak about that tomorrow. But listen, thank you very much for calling in this morning. Let's hear from Bryson in Glasgow. Morning, Bryson.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. What do you think, Bryson? Do you think it's a good idea to drop it?
Well, the point I've made to your researcher was that people earning £1 million a year will pay £400,000 approximately in tax, which is a huge sum of money. And people don't seem to appreciate how much tax is paid by these top earners. I think if you take the top 10% of the population, they pay about half the tax take for the country.
Yeah, I've got a figure here, actually. The top 1% of earners pay 27% of the income tax.
Well, that just supports what I'm actually saying. And if you take people, if you're talking about tax avoidance and things, people like Wayne Rooney, who earns multi-millions, has set itself up as a company. And he only pays 18% corporation tax. Now that is morally reprehensible. Far worse than the bankers or anyone else. And they keep this banker bashing going on. There's people in private companies that earn 10 times what bankers earn. But we don't hear anything about them. And I don't know why.
I mean, Colin, how easy is it for high earners to avoid paying? Now, what's the right word? Avoid or evade? What's the one that we get away with?
Avoid.
How easy is it?
Tax mitigation, Kaye, is that the
tax
phrase you're looking for?
That's right. How easy is it for them to mitigate their tax liability?
I think it comes back to what some of your earlier callers were saying. I think if you can afford to pay for the high-level accountancy advice, there are schemes out there which will challenge the revenue in terms of tax payment. But they are high risk and they can often be challenged retrospectively. For the more mundane tax reliefs, it really is just a case of things like funding pensions to try and get tax relief on pension contributions and so on for most people that are being taxed through the PAYE system. But I do come back to the fact that I think the people we need to get after are those that are the very high earners who are taking advantage of tax avoidance schemes or using residence in countries such as Monaco, where the tax regime is much more pleasant for them. So I think that these are the people that we need to be bearing down on.
Mm-hmm. But see, what I can't understand there, and I think I raised this earlier, was, I mean, if the argument, if you're giving the argument that we should drop the rate of tax, the 40 down to 45, because we need to stimulate growth, we need to encourage people, etc., but at the same time arguing for going after high earners and cracking down on any tax evasion, avoidance, mitigation schemes that they have, well, surely, that is going to freak them out, the technical term that I used before, and then you're going to lose their wealth. So the argument that you put for dropping the tax surely sits just the same for going and getting them, on the avoidance schemes.
Well, these are quite often people who are out with the UK tax system at the moment, Kaye. They've put themselves in a situation where they are out with the UK tax system by living in a country which has a far less penal tax system for them. So maybe that's something that George Osborne needs to look at. Is
these are the non-DOMs we hear about, are they?
Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't necessarily stop them running businesses in the UK, because they're still allowed to be in the UK 90 days a year, which is fairly generous. It would still allow these people to run their businesses whilst living in a tax haven, as it were.
Right, okay. Colin Brown, thank you very much, finance advisor there. And Bryson, thanks to everyone on that. The budget, of course, is this afternoon, so we will get more detail about exactly what is happening. And as I say, we're probably expecting to hear some announcements on changes to the welfare system, so we may well be talking about that tomorrow. Rob Murray in Galston says, if the 50p tax rate is scrapped, I'll be ashamed in the party. We should be cutting fuel tax. MF says, why should someone earning £160,000 a year pay more than £50,000 in taxation NI a year? Many of these people work more than 14 hours a day and are certainly not the super rich, and are not non-productive assets. They are real people working their butts off to pay for the benefits of those in need. Stop generalising. Gillian in Paisley says, as a single mum working full-time with childcare, which is higher than my mortgage, I'm sure you can imagine how I feel about the reduction in 50% tax. I'm losing the little bit of help I receive in tax credits, and I'm left wondering why I'm working for nothing and missing my daughter growing up. Start targeting big companies who avoid paying massive tax bills. We've got loads and loads on this one. D from Bishop Briggs says, the raising of the amount earned before paying tax will surely benefit all taxpayers, including those who pay 50% at the moment. I'm totally against an 80% tax rate, but 50% seems fair. Let those who wish to go abroad go. There'll be plenty who could fill the shoes. Make all tax avoidance and evasion illegal, and let's try to narrow the gap between rich and poor. And Kenneth Dennismuir, it seems that if you laid all the economists in the world end to end, they still would not reach a conclusion. Let's go back to our health and safety, because I like that. Donnie the ploughboy says, my tractor tells me to keep the roof hatch open when crossing ice-covered water. The trouble is, I don't have a roof hatch. And Jan says, on a train between Glasgow and Edinburgh, I bought a coffee and a chocolate biscuit, brackets, with a feline name. What is that? A chocolate biscuit with a feline name? What is it? Should I be getting that? Am I missing something? Oh, I know it. You've got it. Thank you very much. Take a break. From the trolley lady, the biscuit contained the warning, best before someone else eats it. Now, see, that is the kind of health and safety advice that I like, something with a bit of a sense of humour.